Hey everybody, it's Kothis. In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can dominate the King's Fall raid. Whether you're running it for the first time with your fire team or are joining a random LFG team, it's my goal to make sure that you feel confident and know that you can get it done with mastering some really fun mechanics. This is the best raid of all time in my opinion. So with that being said, let's get right into it. The first encounter is simple. Two people need to grab the charges and deposit them at the statue simultaneously for a total of 6 statue deposits. There are only 2 roles in this encounter. You've got runners and ad clearers. Runners are responsible for quickly running the orb back to the middle for the correct statue deposit, and ad clearers will obviously need to ad clear, and also need to make sure the taken doorways are destroyed to avoid any time delay for the runners. Something to note here is the moment one runner picks up an orb, a timer will start, so a 3, 2, 1 grab is pretty nice here to make sure that both the runners have the same maximum amount of runtime. If the timer runs out, it's okay, the charges will just respawn and you'll have to grab them again. The charges will start in the middle of the area, but will move further and further away from the middle after each successful deposit, eventually making it to the furthest possible area on each side. Once all 6 statues have been charged, the portal will open and you can progress to the next area. The jumping puzzle is, well, a jumping puzzle, so I'm just going to speed this up. You can follow this path if you're worried about getting kicked for missing a jump. First off, you shouldn't play with a group like that anyway, and second off, you got it. It's actually a lot easier than you think. Once you make it here, you'll notice a barrier blocking the pathway and another door keeping the secret chest area blocked off. To open it, you'll have to have 2 guardians stand on these 2 platforms. They'll need to remain on these platforms or else the pathways will be blocked. If you're running with an LFG team, maybe offer to hold the platforms here. It's a small thing that'll be appreciated. Once the traveling ship members make it through the secret door, the secret chest will be available. Now the members that have crossed will have access to 2 new plates that can be used to open the door for the original plate team to cross. Once all fire team members are safely crossed and secret chest opened, it's time for totems. This is where things can get a little bit more challenging, but don't worry. You've got this. It's actually a really fun encounter. Have your teams split up into teams of 3. 3 for the left side and 3 for the right side. Both the left and the right side will have 3 responsibilities that everyone will need to quickly cycle throughout the encounter in this order: Brand Holder, Deathsinger's Power Depositor, and Brand Claimer. To make things easier, let's just pretend we're starting off as the Brand Holder. Remember that everything said here will apply to both the left and the right side because each side is pretty much identical in terms of layout and all responsibilities are exactly the same. Okay, so if you are starting off as the brand holder, grab the brand orb here and immediately head to the plate in your room. Leaving this plate unguarded for around 6 seconds will cause a full team wipe. Once you're here on the platform, you'll need to kill enemies to generate Deathsinger's power stacks. Things can get hectic while guarding the plates, so feel free to use your super if needed. We also found that machine guns work really well here too for killing ads. You'll notice as well that the brand buff also comes with a 30-second timer attached, and letting this get down to 0 will result in a death just for you. This is where the other teammates on your team come into play. While you're killing enemies on the plate, Another player, or multiple players if there are other people helping, will be killing a wizard on the balcony area adjacent to the big door we are trying to open. Once the wizard is killed, that player will need to quickly kill the taken knight that will start spawning in, and once killed, that knight will drop the Brand Claimer buff. It is a black orb on the ground, you can't miss it. Once that's picked up, the now Brand Claimer teammate can run to you to claim the brand that you're holding. This teammate will now be the brand holder with a fresh 30-second timer and will need to do what you were just doing. Stand on the plate and kill enemies. And now that you've got your brand safely removed, it's time to deposit your Deathsinger stacks to the middle platform. Once all your stacks are gone, you can head up to the balcony, kill the wizard and knight, pick up the Brand Claimer buff, and head to your teammate guarding the platform. You'll cycle through this as many times as you need in order to fully charge up the door. Note that you can see how close you are to charging the door by seeing how many glyphs are lit up on the door. As you get further and further along, you will notice more and more enemies start to spawn in, namely the unstoppable ogres that have a tendency to get really angry. So make sure that you take them out as quickly as you can. They will spawn from the green door that we're trying to open, and a total of 3 will spawn in, and by the end a ton of knights will be spawning in too. So rocket launchers, if you have them, if you're not using a machine gun, work really well here, but overall it's not too bad as long as you have maybe a well or 2 or maybe a bubble. Once you fully charge the door will open, and it's time to move on to the Warpriest. The Warpriest is the first actual boss from the raid that you'll fight, and is considered to be a damage check for you and your fire team. If you don't do enough damage in 4 phases, you will die to the enrage mechanic. So get ready, it's time for some big DPS. I'm sure more optimal damage methods will come out over time. I've seen swords do really well with the Lament, but my team has enjoyed using Divinity and linear fusion rifles for a pretty easy 3-phase. The Taipan is great, but you can also use a bait and switch Cataclysm or Reeds or Grit. Really, any linear fusion should be fine. Okay, so the layout of the room is pretty simple. You've got left, middle, and right side. Each zone has a platform and a giant floating totem associated with it. Try to have your team split up into 3 teams of 2 for even area coverage, but you really only need 1 person per zone. Alright, so there are a few things that need to get done to ensure you get to the damage phase, and more importantly, once you get to the damage phase, extend the duration of that phase for as long as you can. Before we start the encounter, make sure each zone has a player that's comfortable with being responsible for the zone's plate when the glyph reading sequence begins. When everyone is ready, all 3 plates need to be stepped on to start the encounter. At the beginning, everyone will just be doing basic ad clear and avoiding the boss's weapon fire, which can actually do a lot of damage, so watch out. Eventually, 2 wizards will spawn and will need to be dealt with, and after that, 3 Revenant Knights will enter the room with a loud roar as an audio cue. One knight will appear in each zone, so left, middle, right, and once the final knight is killed, the glyph reading sequence will begin, which is indicated in the kill feed. To initiate the sequence, the person responsible for the middle plate will step on their plate, and will need to look at the back of the left and right floating totems to see if one of them has a white glow on the backside. Here's an example of what the glow looks like. If neither are glowing, that's okay, it just means the middle totem is glowing, you just can't see it because you're on the middle, so it means that that one's the one that needs to be stepped on. Stepping off the plate at any time will take away the ability to see what totem is lit up, so make sure to stay on the plate until the correct totem is seen. But let's get back to what happens next. No matter what the correct callout is, the middle player will have to step off the plate after making the first call, even if the correct call is the middle one. So if it is middle, just step off and then step back on, and either the right or left side will glow. The same totem cannot light up twice in a glyph reading sequence. As an example, let's just say the correct callout is right for the first callout. The person responsible for that right plate will then need to step on their plate, and now they will be able to see the next glowing totem. If it's middle, the middle player would then jump on their plate, and the final plate will always be the plate that is not currently occupied. Keep in mind that besides the middle plate person that makes that initial call out, everyone will need to stay on their plate until the glyph sequence is completed. Otherwise, it will fail the sequence and you'll have to start all over. You only have about 15 seconds to complete the sequence, and if you fail, it will be a full team wipe. Once a successful glyph reading sequence occurs, the final player to step on a plate will get a 15-second brand buff, which is indicated by the giant red bubble around them. You can't miss it. So what this means is it's time for damage phase. My team usually collects in the middle for damage, but go with whatever your group prefers. If you're with an LFG team that just wants to do damage in a weird spot, just be adaptable. It doesn't really matter where you do damage from. Alright, so the big red bubble surrounding that brand holder is actually the aura we'll need to do damage to the Warpriest. So making sure that players collect together quickly will make for the most optimal DPS. As I mentioned, you can extend the duration of the damage phase by having any non-brand holding teammate find the taken knight, kill it, and pick up the new brand claimer orb. This is actually not optional, it is part of the mechanics. You'll need to do this. Just as with the totems encounter, the brand claimer will need to claim the brand buff from the person holding it, the person with the giant red bubble around them. For optimal damage, the brand holder should be counting down from 8 to 10 seconds, letting the claimer easily be able to pick up the brand as close to 1 second as possible. If taken too early, say 6 to 7 seconds left, that would mean that 6 to 7 seconds of damage were missed out on because you claimed it too early, which is why it should be taken as close to 1 second as possible. A total of 2 taken knights can be killed for the brand claimer buffs per damage phase, meaning that you can take the damage from about 15 seconds to 30 seconds or so. The best method here is just to make sure you have 2 people every time that are ready to go and find those knights. Once the damage phase is over, or when the brand buff timer runs down to 0, the Warpriest will call upon the Oculus, which will activate the giant taken bubble in the front of the room, basically blinding the entire room and killing anyone not protected by the giant totem's shadows. Make sure that everyone knows which totem they are going to be standing behind, because once the Oculus nuke goes off, it will actually destroy any totem with players behind it, meaning that if everyone is split up behind all the totems for some reason, which should never happen, one Oculus nuke can destroy every totem. This means as long as everyone collects behind the same totem, you'll have 4 chances to do damage before you will lose protection from the Oculus. Once the Oculus nuke goes off, everyone should just stand behind one totem and rinse and repeat up to 4 damage phases until the Warpriest is dead. Now, it's time to make a quick pit stop for some extra loot at the second secret chest, and we'll meet Golgoroth. For the second secret chest, this will be much easier if I just show this amazing map by Tenruken. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Just have your team make their way through and call out the platform number they want to take. Everyone has to jump on these plates in order for the chest to unlock. Once successful, the chest will open in the middle of the room, and you can progress through to Golgoroth. Golgoroth is a fairly easy fight as long as everyone can get down a bit of timing and pay attention to potential debuffs appearing on screen during the damage phase. Alright, so the layout of this room again is pretty straightforward. You've got the left and right side and middle pit area where you'll be doing damage. The easiest way to get this fight done is to have everyone just clear adds during the non-damage phase, then during damage phase have 2 designated gaze grabbers and 4 designated damage dealers. Here's how the fight works. Try to evenly split up everyone in the room to just clear adds. Eventually, a few wizards and knights will spawn, and once these are cleared, an orb will appear above the pit area where Golgoroth is. It's always going to be this same orb. So this also means that damage phase is available. Have the damage dealers group up behind cover close to the orb, and have the 2 gaze grabbers stand on the ledges behind Golgoroth. The first gaze grabber can then shoot Golgoroth's exposed back, while the damage team shoots the orb. After a bit of practice, the team should be able to make these 2 things happen at the same time. Okay, so starting with the damage team. The dropped orb forms a pool of reclaimed light, and standing in this pool will give the team a massive damage boost. Damage team should be unloading linear fusion shots at Golgoroth's stomach crit spot while standing in this pool, as you only have a short amount of time in the pool to do damage before it expires. After about 8 to 10 seconds goes by after dropping the orb, someone in the pool at random will get the Drained with Light debuff with a 5-second timer. This is indicated by a small sound cue that everyone nearby will hear, and also a visual cue on the drained player's screen. Your screen will look green, kind of like this. That player needs to quickly run next to Golgoroth as the timer reaches 0 to not only do some nice damage, but also prevent themselves from killing anyone around them. The Drained with Light debuff is basically a bomb that will kill everyone within a 10-foot radius, excluding themselves. My team likes to say, "Who has it?" once an audio cue happens to let everyone know, get focused, it's time to check. As the pool of Reclaimed Light buff goes away after about 10 seconds or so, the damage team should start focusing on the next orb that appears, where they'll need to do the exact same thing. Do the damage, wait for the debuff, drop it off at the boss, and again start working on the next orb, up to a total of 6 times. Dropping 6 orbs should be the team's goal every single time, not only to extend the amount of damage you can do, but also prevent a team wipe, but we'll get to that in a sec. Gaze grabbers, here is what you will be doing. As stated earlier, you will want to grab that gaze as close to the same time as damage team drops their first orb as possible, so make sure to communicate. Getting the gaze requires just a quick linear or sniper shot, so don't worry about it. Once the gaze grabber successfully grabs the gaze, a timer will appear on screen for them. Golgoroth will face in whatever direction they are and will launch a barrage of Axion darts at them, so be careful. Once the person has the gaze, they will need to quickly make their way behind the damage team, since Golgoroth needs to be facing them so they can damage that stomach crit spot. Gaze grabbers need to also be counting down their timer. The second gaze grabber should be ready to grab the gaze as soon as the timer approaches 0 or close to it. Once the second gaze grabber is successful, they will need to do the same thing the first grabber did. Quickly make their way behind the damage team to focus them in their direction. Once this has been done 6 times, again along with the 6 orbs that are dropped, should time out perfectly, it's time to rinse and repeat if you don't get it in the one phase. Very important part here. Failing to grab the gaze will cause the next damage orb to not spawn, meaning less damage time and a potential wipe. See that totem behind Golgoroth? Each glyph represents a gaze grab, and failing to grab the gaze will overflow that totem and cause an instant team wipe. The totem will start at full, meaning that if you only grab the gaze twice, 4 will still be glowing, meaning that on the next phase you'll need to grab at least 4 gazes. At the end of the day, I know that's confusing, your team should just focus on getting 6 gazes every time to avoid this. That should always be the goal. And now that Golgoroth is dead, it's time for yet another jumping puzzle and secret chest, and we'll move on to the Daughters of Oryx. This is a lot quicker than the other jumping puzzle, but I still want to include it because this is a full King's Fall guide. I will speed it up again as well, obviously, and show you where the third secret chest is. The only minor mechanic in this area is that all of the available plates have to be stepped on at the same time to create a path for the rest of the fire team, and you will see that right here. Alright, we are almost there. Time for the Daughters of Oryx. This fight is very quick, but also requires some quick thinking and adaptability to complete. This is the same room that we will fight Oryx in, so we will structure the room's callouts by the 4 platforms that are in it. L1, L2, R1, R2 is what my team uses, and also what we will be using for this guide, but use whatever your team finds is easiest. Break up your team into 1 guardian per plate with 2 roaming guardians, 1 for the front and 1 for the back side of the room. Everyone will need to be ready to move, so comms need to be clear for the right callouts. To start the fight, kill the knight on the first platform. This knight will always signify the first platform per damage phase. At the start of the encounter, the daughters will begin their dirge song, indicated by the timer on everyone's screen. Everything we need to do, even the damage phase, needs to be done before this timer reaches 0. At the start of the encounter, 1 random member of the team will be torn between dimensions, as indicated by the very obvious black and white screen they will have. If that person was responsible for a plate, they will need to make a call like, "I'm torn, need a replacement at R2." And these are where the roaming players come into play. They will basically cover the plate that the torn person just mentioned. The torn player needs to immediately make their way to the first plate, where that plate holder should already be calling out the second and final plate, as indicated by the floating orb about 30 feet above the plate. As an example, the callouts should be start R1, finish L2. Once both correct plates are stood on, floating platforms will form for the torn player, and they'll need to quickly make their way to the floating orb. Once picked up, everyone should jump off their platforms and start looking for the next starting platform where the knight will be. A new player will become torn immediately after the first player picks up their orb. Again, callouts are huge here. If you get torn and are responsible for a plate, it is up to you to communicate that to your team that you need a replacement. You'll need to grab 3 orbs in total, and the final one actually needs to be grabbed. You can't just walk over it, but the player that takes that final orb will need to dunk it on the non-green daughter. This will stun her and open her up for damage. The final orb also doubles as an invincibility aura, so everyone must stay inside the aura until the timer reaches 0. Everyone should gather at the ledge opposite the daughter and nuke her with Gjallarhorn plus 5 other rockets. This makes for a very easy 8 to 10 second melt. Clear ads while remaining in the invincibility aura. If you have extra time after damage, there are a lot that spawn, so this is actually pretty helpful. After this, rinse and repeat until both are dead. Now it's time for the final battle. You've made it. Congratulations, it is time for Oryx. Thankfully, there are no new callout areas since we're in the same room, and we'll be using a lot of what we learned from the last encounter here. Make sure that there is a plate guardian ready to jump on at all times. Now though, there is more than just jumping on the plate that you'll need to worry about, but we will get to that in a minute. First, Taken Knights will spawn on each platform at the start of each damage cycle. Make sure they are killed quickly. Oryx will eventually make his way to one of the 4 platforms, and when he does, he's going to slam it. The plate will then turn green, indicating that that is the start plate. The mechanics here are the same. Someone will randomly get taken, and remember, they need to call out if they were guarding a plate so the roamer can take their plate, and the player that jumps on the start plate will need to call out the finish plate by, again, looking for that floating orb hovering above the correct platform. Call out that orb and have the second plate guardian jump on their plate to complete the floating platforms. This needs to be done again 3 times to initiate the damage phase. Here's where things get interesting. Light Eater Ogres will spawn next to each platform and will need to be killed quickly as they drop a bomb which is needed to stun Oryx, but don't worry, we'll get to that in a second. If you are not in the damage phase, do not step anywhere near these bombs as they will detonate early, which is not what we want. And once a Light Eater Ogre is killed, a Light Eater Knight will spawn on the opposite end of your area and will try to consume the bomb. Again, we do not want this to happen. Strategy here is to quickly dispatch your Ogre, then immediately look for your Light Eater Knight. Arbalest works wonders for this, and try to help out teammates if you see an Ogre or Knight that is not being damaged. Having your head on a swivel is really, really good here. Okay, so once all 3 platforming sections are done, the final Torn player will need to again grab the orb, not just walk over it, and take it to the middle, where the vessel of Oryx, a big knight, will start running to. He will be immune with a white aura that can be claimed by that final platform orb grabber. So once the immunity aura is stolen, the team will need to quickly kill the vessel. At this point, every plate guardian will need to now run to their plate's bomb that the Light Eater Ogre dropped. Wait until you see the text Oryx calls upon the darkness, then walk to the orb, walk inside the orb, and make sure you see your name in the kill feed that you have detonated a bomb, if you are responsible for a bomb. Quickly run back to the middle where the person holding the immunity aura should be. Oryx should be stunned by the bombs you just detonated. 4 bombs will give you the most damage uptime, so if a Light Eater may have claimed a bomb, you'll have less time. Either way, shoot his heart to damage him. Linear fusions, again, do really good here, and outclass just about every other form of damage in the game. After this, Oryx will become immune and will do one of 2 things. First thing that can happen is a bomb storm. You'll know he's about to do this if he jumps away from the front of the ship. These bombs will instantly kill you, so the strategy to avoid them here is to just run circles around the platform you are guarding if you were guarding one, and if you're a roamer, just run up and down the middle section of your zone. This prevents guardians from running into each other and causing wipes. The other thing he can do is summon a giant taken orb and call in players one by one to another dimension where you will need to fight a shade of Oryx. A Blade Barrage does a ton of damage here, but I wouldn't really worry about it too much. This is actually a really good time to try and stack up on ammo and prepare to do it all over again. Once you get Oryx to his health breakpoint, the final stand will begin. Keep in mind, if everyone is low on ammo before hitting the breakpoint, it's probably a good idea to stop damage early so you can get more ammo and actually kill him in the final stand. The damage phase will remain the same for the most part for the final stand, except 2 new Light Eater Ogres will spawn on the L2 and R2 platforms. The whole team should focus them down. Make sure to not step in them and detonate the bombs early until you see the Oryx calls upon the darkness text again. This will again stun him one more time and allow you to get the kill. Yes, I was freaking out when I got that Touch of Malice, the unique exotic for this raid. Good luck getting one. If you run it enough, you'll get it too. As the text said at the beginning of this video, I will include a link to the 4th secret chest, which also contains a guaranteed red border drop once per week. It was just a little too intensive to include in this video. I didn't want to make it too long, but anyway, the first chest every week will also allow you to get any red border weapon for any weapon you've found for 20 spoils of conquest, so make sure to get at least 1 King's Fall raid in weekly, as these weapons are some of the best in the game right now. Well, I hope this helped you. If you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate a like on this video, as it took quite a few runs and a lot of editing time. I'm still new to this, but I really love it. I plan on making much more of this type of content soon, so subscribe to stay tuned. I will see you next time.